This is Starry Ari's ASMR. I am Ari, and in this video I will be solving the rest of my new space-themed puzzle. Now, this puzzle took me a bit longer than expected, so I decided to make it a time-lapse instead of just showing hours of footage. I really enjoy watching satisfying time-lapses, and I hope you do too. But I also think that it would be fun to add this voiceover to include some interesting space facts, comment on the puzzle as we go along. My mother was visiting over the weekend, so she did help me sort some pieces and get started on a few sections. I will also be adding some background ambient sounds to hopefully make this video feel more relaxing and inviting. I have gathered a list of interesting tidbits about space and our solar system. I looked around online and found a great informative website called theplanets.org, so I picked a few things to share from there. I also follow NASA on Instagram and picked a few interesting tidbits from that and some of their posts. I'm also very lucky in that my husband studied astronomy during his undergrad, so I picked his brain a little bit and he offered me some fun suggestions, some things that he really likes about space. So I am hoping that you may learn something, or maybe you just put this on in the background and find it relaxing. In my unboxing video, I made a comment about the image for this puzzle being loosely based on our solar system and taking some necessary liberties with the scale of things. But one interesting fact about the scale of our actual solar system is that our sun is so large that it contains 99.8% of the solar system's mass. This means that all of the planets, the moons, asteroid belts, and everything else floating around only make up that remaining 0.2%. So our sun really is quite massive when you think about it like this. I grew up learning that Pluto was a planet, and I imagine many of you did as well, before it was declassified to a dwarf planet. I know lots of people have strong feelings about this, but I think the declassification is actually pretty interesting though. So Pluto isn't called a planet anymore, largely because we were discovering more objects similar in size and behavior to Pluto, and there were some distinctions in how they behaved compared to our other planets. We had to decide whether or not to call these other objects that we discovered planets, and if we did, we'd have a solar system of a bunch of planets right now. Our poor elementary school students would have a really tough time memorizing them all. Any reasonable definition that included these objects would have also included certain large asteroids. An interesting fact about asteroids too is that some were actually considered planets when they were first discovered, but then they were later declassified once we discovered more asteroids. is actually no sound in space. Now, many of us know that space is a vacuum. What this means is that it contains almost no matter. Sound is actually carried by atoms and molecules. So in space, with no atoms or molecules to carry the sound wave, there is no sound. So unfortunately, all of those really cool outer space shots in Star Wars or Star Trek where the spaceship is zooming by, kind of sounding like a low drum of a semi-truck, that is sadly not accurate. One of the common topics in my household are recent advancements in space observations or technology. And one of the very cool ones was actually recently, just in these last few years, with the James Webb Space Telescope. Now, many people are familiar with the Hubble Space Telescope, which was launched into Earth's orbit back in 1990. We were able to make some really groundbreaking observations with the Hubble Space Telescope that led to amazing breakthroughs in astrophysics, such as determining the rate of expansion of the universe. Now, the James Webb Space Telescope is the largest space telescope, and it orbits the Sun rather than the Earth like the Hubble does. It is equipped with higher resolution and higher sensitivity instruments, which allows it to view objects that are too old, too distant, or too faint for the Hubble. The James Webb's observations have already substantially advanced our understanding of exoplanets and the first billion years of the universe, as well as many other astrophysical and cosmological phenomena. We expect to make many more amazing discoveries with the use of the James Webb's technology. I imagine that we will hear more about some amazing discoveries with the James Webb in the coming years and perhaps decades to follow. The hottest planet in our solar system is Venus. Most people think that this would actually be Mercury, as it is the closest planet to the Sun. However, Venus has a lot of gases in its atmosphere, which create a greenhouse effect. And this causes a constant temperature of about 864 degrees Fahrenheit, or 462 degrees Celsius, everywhere on the planet's surface. Compared to the other planets in our solar system, Venus actually rotates backwards. So it is spinning in the opposite direction. And there are a few theories for this. One is that perhaps one or more very large impacts occurred that converted Venus's rotation from counterclockwise to clockwise. Another theory is that the tidal effects on Venus's thick atmosphere from the sun imparted clockwise momentum on Venus's rotation, slowly converting it from counterclockwise originally to clockwise now. The highest mountain discovered in our solar system is the Olympus Mons, which is located on Mars. Its peak is about 16 miles high, making it nearly 3 times higher than Mount Everest. It also has an area almost the size of Arizona, so it is also quite wide. It takes the moon about 27 days and 8 hours to make a complete rotation around the Earth. The moon and the Earth have what is called a synchronous rotation, which means the speed at which the moon rotates around its own axis is the same speed at which the moon rotates around the Earth. This is why no one ever gets to see the other side of the moon, which is sometimes called the dark side. In fact, the correct name for the other side of the moon is actually the far side, since dark side implies that that side of the moon doesn't ever get sunlight, which it actually does get. We just never see it. The footprints left on the moon by our astronauts won't disappear as there is no wind. Now, some people have created conspiracies around this fact, stating that the astronauts' footprints are too clear and that an environment as dry as the moon would not leave these imprints. However, we know that moon dust is actually a very finely ground powder, really similar in appearance to volcanic ash. So when a foot or any object is pressed into it, it compresses very easily into the shape of that object, in this example, boot prints. And as a result of the moon's airless vacuum, the shapes created on the surface could stay pristine for a very long time and less disturbed in other ways. Now, I did take a few breaks while I was doing this puzzle, just out of necessity. I didn't want to end up sitting there for hours. I needed to stretch my legs, but once this puzzle kind of got going, I felt like it was very, very satisfying. At this point, the section with the sun and the bottom section with what looks like Earth is pretty well fleshed out. So I'm starting to work on that top area with the planet that I believe is inspired by Saturn with the rings. Saturn is known for its very bright and complex rings. It is not the only planet to have rings, but no other planets quite compare to Saturn. Saturn and Jupiter are quite similar from their atmospheric composition to their rotation, and because of these factors of being so similar, Saturn was named after the father of the god Jupiter in Roman mythology. Saturn has 150 moons and smaller moonlets. All of these moons are frozen, and the largest of which is Titan. And Titan is actually the second largest moon in the entire solar system. The first largest moon in the solar system is the moon Ganymede, and it is one of Jupiter's moons. So things really kind of start to come along. It's very satisfying, and usually once you get a few good chunks of the puzzle done, it just goes a little bit faster. I did notice, however, that some of the pieces would fit when they actually should not have. And that does happen sometimes with these cheaper puzzles, where it's just the cut of the pieces is just a little too close. And so sometimes you might see that I had to flip over a couple of pieces and check on the back, because it does have a grid on the back, and see if things lined up. And there were a few times where I'm glad that I did that, because things did not line up when I felt like they maybe should have. I also lined up some puzzle pieces on the table around the puzzle, so you can see some of them down there at the bottom. But I also had some up at the top, as well as a decent amount of unsorted puzzle pieces still in the box. So every now and then I would take a look at the box if I was looking for something specific and pull out similar colors. Now, it had been a while since I did a physical puzzle, so this one definitely took me longer, but I think that it was really fun. There's something just so different about picking up and holding the puzzle pieces. However, I think that I am excited to get back to some simpler digital puzzles again, and have the space on my table available. I also had tried out this puzzle map for the first time, and I don't think that I'm going to use it again in the future. I think that it was just a little bit too difficult to move the pieces around like I typically like to do. Which I mean, that's the point of the puzzle mat. It's supposed to grip the puzzle pieces so that if you need to transfer the puzzle somewhere, you have a nice mat to do that on. But I think that I don't normally move the puzzle a whole lot, so I don't think that's really necessary for me. I did have a good fun time completing this one though. Now, I really enjoyed researching some of these fun space facts for this video, but sometimes when I think about the vastness of space and the sheer size of infinity, I do get a bit overwhelmed, as I'm sure we all tend to do sometimes. But there is this one quote that is attributed to Neil deGrasse Tyson that I think is really quite beautiful, that I wanted to leave you with as we come to the end of this video. The atoms of our bodies are traceable to stars that manufactured them in their cores and exploded these enriched ingredients across our galaxy billions of years ago. For this reason, we are biologically connected to every other living thing in the world. We are chemically connected to all molecules on Earth, and we are atomically connected to all atoms in the universe. We are not figuratively, but literally stardust. So here is the finished puzzle. Certainly took me a bit longer than I expected. But I hope that you enjoyed watching the time lapse of me completing it. I did have some help. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.